Alright, bear with me because I'm still very shooken up and emotional, and Anyways, I just got home from singing the national anthem in Spanish at the Dodgers game, and it is the official Star Spangled Banner in Spanish. You can Google it. So I'll just read it to you really quick, but it was officially commissioned in 1945 by the U.S. State Department as a part of President Franklin Roosevelt's Good Neighbor policy to foster a better relationship with Latin America. Because of this, I didn't think I would be met with any sort of no, especially because we're in LA and with everything happening. And I've sang the national anthem many times in my life, but there was today out of all days. I could not. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just could not believe when she walked in and told me no. But I just felt like I needed to do it. Para mi gente. For anyone who's been following me for a while, you know, everything I do is out of love, good energy out of love, and I'm proud of myself for doing that today. Because my parents are immigrants, and they've been citizens like my whole life at this point. They got documented really early, but I just can't imagine them being ripped away from me, even at this age, let alone a little kid. What are we doing?
My husband cheated on me, so let's get into that. All right, it's Wednesday morning. My husband wakes me up. He asked me to pray with him, and immediately I did, as a good wife should. He was breathing heavy and crying. I didn't know what was wrong, but we knew who to go to. Hallelujah. I prayed, he sits up, he's still crying, breathing heavy, wiping away tears. Then he asked me, can I tell you something the Lord showed me? I'm like, yeah, of course, I definitely want to know, because, what did the Lord show you? He began to tell me about his dream, and in the dream, he was walking with Jesus and some other people, and Jesus was telling him there was only one way, and he had to walk through this darkness, and he didn't know what was beyond that darkness, and Jesus told him not to be scared, but to trust him. Then he told me, I have to repent to you and tell you that I was unfaithful to you. Now, right here, I didn't immediately notice the switch up. I thought he was still telling me about the dream, so I'm like, huh? Our son wakes up. We say good morning. He goes down to use the restroom. So I say, what did you say? I'm confused. He said, did you hear me? I said, yeah, you said you were unfaithful. How? What happened? I'm like, in what way were you unfaithful, honey? What did you do? What do you mean? He said 2 months ago, I had sex with someone else. Son comes back upstairs. I'm like, Lord, help. So at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, I said, son, here's mommy's phone. You can go downstairs and play a game, because what's happening right now? So I asked my husband, wait, what are you talking about? Are you joking right now? Are you serious? When, where, how? All the questions, right? He said, one day I took son to school and you stayed home. So we live in Dallas. We live in Mesquite. Our son was going to school in Dallas. So instead of driving from Mesquite to Dallas and coming all the way back home, we drove from Mesquite to Dallas, dropped our son off at school, and while our son was at school, we just stayed in Dallas the whole day. So from 8 a.m. to 3:20 p.m., we stayed in Dallas. So the last few months of school, we were trying to think of ways of how to save some money. So of course, while we're in Dallas all day, we need breakfast and or lunch. And so we came up with the great idea of one of us staying back at home in Mesquite so that we don't spend as much money in Dallas on breakfast or lunch. So he had took our son to school one day and I had stayed home in Mesquite. So that's how that happened. And at this point, I'm in disbelief. I'm discombobulated. The betrayal. One thing I told my husband before we got married, and multiple times after, was this: we will not step outside of our marriage. We will not commit adultery. Why? because we're going to take our marriage seriously. And the one thing Jesus himself that y'all have said in the comments, yes, Jesus himself specifically mentions as grounds for divorce is found in Matthew 5:32, and it reads, "But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery." And it also says after that, that any man who marries a divorced wife also commits adultery upon himself, something like that. It's in there. So yeah, anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality. Not if they get on your nerves, not if they lie, not if you're going through a rough patch, but if they're unfaithful, then you can divorce. That's powerful to me because marriage is a covenant. It's meant to be lasting and sacred. But even Jesus acknowledged that adultery strikes at the heart of that covenant in a way that gives the innocent spouse the right to walk away. So I told my husband, if you ever fix yourself to cheat on me, I will leave you. And he cheated. So I cut the conversation short because I had to get ready to leave the house to go to a doctor's appointment for myself, then later my sons, and I had errands to run, I had groceries to get. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to shed a tear. I'm not going to shed a tear because God is and has been so good to me. So I'm good. I know that what you did is not the Lord's fault. It's yours. So fast forward. It was just me and my son for half the day. I took us out to get a little treat before his doctor's appointment. I grabbed a matcha latte for myself and got him a hot chocolate. My baby was so happy. He was like, this is the best day of my life. I'm like, oh, baby, for mommy, it's not. You know, he was completely unaware of what was going on. We were gone for 6 hours, and during that time, I had space to process everything, and my emotions were crystal clear. I was pissed all day. I couldn't even be the mom I wanted to be that day. Unfortunately, I was snappy with my son, and I felt terrible for it. I remember talking to the Lord saying, God, I told him not to do this one thing. I made it clear, don't play me, don't disrespect our marriage, and he did exactly what I asked him not to do. I would even tell my husband this, like, don't play me. And he used to laugh it off. Like, be like, girl, hush, you know I would never. And yet here we are. So, yeah. It hurts. It is deep, for sure. I was very intentional in our marriage. I checked in with him. I asked, is there anything I can do to be a better partner, a better wife, a better mom? I wasn't perfect, but I knew I had done nothing short of giving it my all, and he still broke that trust. So I told God, I'm leaving. So when we got home, I had our son go downstairs. Once that door closed, I went off. I'm like, you really took me as a joke. I told you not to do this one thing you did. So yes, we're getting divorced because you really played me. You really played me like, no, you're crazy. I don't want to hear it. Don't touch me. I will punch you in the throat. Do not touch me. I was like, I'm so excited to plan my divorce party. And I'm telling everybody the only reason I'm not leaving you today and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, we're no longer your family. This is all on you. And honestly, y'all, I don't even remember the rest of that day from 6:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. But after 9 p.m., we were getting our son to bed, and I wanted my husband. And it hit me again because I'm like, you did your thing with someone else, told me this morning, and here I am at the end of the same day, not wanting anyone else but you. I started to feel like wanting my husband was wrong. Like I started to feel guilty. Like I was betraying myself, literally feeling like it was wrong. But fast forward, we ended up having one of the most meaningful and intimate moments we've ever shared. And I'll stop there. Timer's running out, and I will share more with you guys tomorrow. I'm not gonna say I promise, but I will share more with you guys tomorrow. Yeah, there's so much more to say, so much more to address, and I will. So stay tuned. Y'all be blessed. My name is Julia, and I'm going to be doing a story time on how I was SA'd by my tattoo artist. Okay, so for the record, I went by myself. I had a tattoo appointment in New Orleans. 3 o'clock yesterday.
That's what time my appointment was for. He was a little late or whatever, but he had came like 30 minutes later or whatever. Mind you, I went to his house. He said he had another shop, but it was further than his house. So I just went to the closest one, which was his house. Okay, mind you, this is not my first time going by myself to get a tattoo. This is my first time going to him. We followed each other on Instagram for a while, but I thought he was like a cool person or whatever. Like, he seemed like cool, you know, he seemed really cool. Okay, so I had on this brown two-piece set. Y'all know those Target two-piece sets or whatever. So it was shorts and a shirt. Mind you, the tattoo that I got is on my leg, but the area is only right here. I have work done up here, but he wasn't working on that. So, however, he ended up telling me, like, pull up my shorts on the side. So, I put my shorts up on the side, but, like, I guess I didn't pull it up enough. So, he wanted to roll them up. So, like, he rolled it into my underwear. So, now it's like I have on, like, a swimsuit. That's what my shorts are looking like on both sides. Both legs. My shorts are rolled up. Okay, and so he put paper towels in, like, the creases of my shorts or whatever. So, I'm thinking maybe he didn't want the ink to get on me or whatever. I'm not sure because I do have a tattoo, like, on the back side. Okay, so I'm on the table, you know, the tattoo table. And the first red flag was he pulled the table down, like, pulled it down to where, like, I'm almost on the floor. And he pulled his seat down, but his legs wasn't under the table. His legs was, like, leveled with the table. So it's like, your knees are going to be on my back if you do my tattoo, right? Okay. So as he's doing that or whatever, he's doing my tattoo, I'm kind of feeling uncomfortable. So I text my friend, I'm like, I think his private area is on my back or whatever. But I'm like, maybe I'm tripping. So a couple minutes go by, and then he started, like, using my other leg and, like, twisting, like, pulling open my shorts, and, like, he would set his, you know what, right there. And so I would, like, scoot over. Mind you, I'm by myself. I'm in New Orleans. I'm in his house. If you know, then you know. Like, I don't know what to do at this point. So, like, I don't want to text anybody. Well, I don't want to call anybody and tell them to come get me, or, you know, come, and I don't know what type of stage of mind he's in. Mind you, you pull it in, so it's no telling, like, what you're really capable of. So the whole time, he's, like, steady doing that. Every time I scoot over, he'll pull me back or, like, literally grab me and turn me. And it's like I'm sitting on his lap. Like, I'm literally basically laying on his lap. And I'm like, I'm finna fall. He's like, no, you're fine. Da, 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 da. I'm like, okay. So, like, I'm just ready for it to be over. So I'm literally texting everybody. I done got on the phone. I'm calling everybody. I'm like, I'm trying to play it off. Like, yeah, I gotta go. And he's still not stopping. It's not phasing him. None whatsoever. And he's still opening up my pants, my shorts, and sticking his right there. And so this happened the whole time. I was there from 3 o'clock all the way up until 9, 10 o'clock. And he would not stop. And so around like 9 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. I got work in the morning, this, that, and the third. And so he's like, oh, well, let me just draw out what I'm going to finish later. So that was a whole another like 30 minutes. And I'm just like, you're not done yet? You know, like, I'm just trying to get out of here safely without being, you know. So he wouldn't stop. He would not stop at all. And I just came on here to tell my story because I feel like he's done it to other people because I don't know you from a can of paint. And you just did that. And then on top of that, he sent me my money back. That's how you know you're guilty of something. Like, I didn't say anything. I played it so cool. When I got in the car, I cried. Because I know this didn't happen to somebody before. And it's like, why would you even, like, do anything like that? Like, that's so weird. He never gave off that vibe or anything. But it's like, you don't know nowadays. And that's why you literally, if you're going somewhere, guys, go with somebody. Don't be like me. Do not be like me. Like, seriously. It's like, the whole time, he's literally pulling open. This is my clothes. He's pulling it to the side, and he's sticking his thing right there. And even, like, if he'll turn around and, like, get something off the table, he'll literally still have it in there. He'll be like this and keep it in there, and he'll just turn around like this. And I'm just, like, I'm literally shaking on the table. Like, I'm so ready to go. I'm irritated. I'm scared for my life. I didn't know what to do. And I feel like if I called the police, he was going to kill me.
I hate to use the comparison of saying that it sounds like a plot from a horror movie because it's not a movie, it's real life, and that makes it 100 times worse. But when you listen to it, it really does sound like a real life scary movie. It was supposed to be 2 weeks of fun for the Girl Scouts. Instead, it turned into a triple homicide. With that being said, I have to say my usual warning. This video does involve children. If you think that listening to this is going to harm your mental health in any way, please skip this video and I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I mean it. I love you. 8-year-old Lori Farmer lived in Oklahoma. She was the oldest. She had 4 younger siblings, and although she was obviously still very young, she played the role of an older sister better than anyone. She was caring, she was funny, she was smart, and she was very, very loved. The summer before going into 5th grade, Lori was signed up to attend a Girl Scout summer camp, Camp Scott. 9-year-old Michelle Guse was also from Oklahoma. She lived with her parents and her older brother. She has been described as a very athletic little girl. She loved the outdoors, she loved plants, and she loved, more than anything, spending time with her family. Michelle had attended Camp Scott the year prior, but in the summer of 1977, she was getting ready to go back for a second time. 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner lived in Oklahoma with her parents. She was the oldest daughter, and she adored her 5-year-old little sister more than anyone in this entire world. She has been described as a very playful girl who also was was very academically smart. All three of those girls had plans to attempt Camp Scott the same summer in 1977. Lori was between two camps originally, but her mom suggested that she go to Camp Scott, and Denise had never been to camp at all. So she was overall very nervous to go away for the summer, but her mother was the one who encouraged her to go. Right before camp, Denise's little sister, who was only 5 years old, turned to her mother and asked her about death and what happens when you pass away. Her next statement would be her telling her mom that tomorrow, the very next day, everyone was going to pass away. Which is shocking when you realize that the very next day, her older sister, along with two other girls, would have their lives tragically ripped away from them. Camp Scott was located in the scenic hills of Mays County in Oklahoma. It had always been a popular destination for Girl Scouts for nearly 50 years. It was known as a peaceful, wholesome place where girls could go to enjoy nature, build friendships, and develop life skills through hiking, canoeing, and campfire activities. Families felt more than safe taking their daughters there, and the camp was cherished for its tradition, its tight-knit community, and its role in fostering independence and confidence in young girls. It was on an area of 410 acres and designed to hold 140 campers and 30 counselors. Before camp started in June, there was a training session held for the counselors in April, and something very significant happened there. After one of their training sessions, a counselor returned to her tent to find that her belongings had been ransacked and a box of donuts had been stolen. She also noticed a handwritten letter that was left. The note, in capital letters, said, quote, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in tent 1, end quote. Somebody had been inside of that tent with intent to leave what we can now consider a warning sign. Unfortunately so, the director of that camp session assumed that the note was a prank, so they threw it away and they didn't think about it again. Lori, Michelle, and Denise arrived on camp June 12th of 1977. There was a total of 130 girls, but those 3 girls were assigned to sleep in the same tent together. And their tent was the one that was closest to the bathrooms, but also the one that was farthest away from the counselor's tent. And the only tent that wasn't visible directly from the counselor's tent. It was blocked by the camp showers. It didn't take long at all for Lori, Michelle, and Denise to start creating a bond and a friendship. Within the very first night, they were laughing, singing songs, hanging out by the campfire together. One of the counselors there found it really sweet because she said that although individually those 3 girls were on the quieter side, together the 3 of them were just as loud and as lively as any of the other girls. That night, they were expecting a storm. There was a lot of rain and thunderstorms on the forecast. Before going to bed, those 3 girls wrote letters to their families to fill them in on how day 1 went for them. In her letter, Lori wrote, quote, "We're at the beginning of a storm and having a lot of fun. I've met 2 new friends, Michelle Goose and Denise Milner. I'm sharing a tent with them." In the note, she wrote about how it started raining, how they were all sitting in their tents writing letters and getting ready to go to sleep, and she ended it with, quote, "I couldn't wait to write. We're all writing letters now because there's hardly anything to do. With love, Lori," end quote. Michelle wrote her letter to her aunt. She also mentioned that it was storming that night and wrote, quote, "Me and my tent mates are in the last tent in our unit. My tent mates are Denise Milner and Lori Farmer. My room is in shades of purple. Love, Michelle," end quote. Denise's letter, on the other hand, was not as happy. Remember, she was the one that was nervous to go to camp in the first place. She wasn't sure about going, and she told her mom that she was anxious, but her mom told her to just go, try it out, and see. She told Denise that if she got to camp and she still didn't like it, all she had to do was call her and her mom would go and pick her up. Her letter read, quote, "Dear Mom, I don't like camp. It's awful. The first day it rained. I have 3 new friends named Glenda, Lori, and Michelle. Michelle and Lori are my new roommates. Mom, I don't want to stay at camp for 2 weeks. I want to come home and see Cassie and everybody," end quote. After writing their letters, Lori, Michelle, and Denise went to sleep just like all the other girls in their respective tent. But that night would be marked by a series of strange and unsettling events that, in hindsight, were terrifying signs to what would be discovered the next morning. At around 11 p.m., some counselors reported seeing flickering lights in the woods, lights that looked to be like flashlights. And some of them even said that they heard what sounded like footsteps in the woods, but claimed that the sounds were faint and pretty hard to hear due to the rain and the thunder. Closer to 1:30 a.m., a camper in a nearby unit recalled hearing a loud scream coming from the direction of the girls' tents, a scream followed by sudden silence. Another counselor has said that she heard what sounded like someone crying or someone moaning, but she described the noise to not really sound human nor like an animal. Specifically, she said she heard sounds of movement outside and a deep, unsettling groan, but because the noise stopped, she fell back asleep. Then, around 3 in the morning, another counselor saw a strange light moving through the woods. She got up briefly but didn't see anyone when she tried to go check, so she eventually returned to sleep. And the last reported scream sounded like someone crying out for their mom, which is heartbreaking. And then it was complete silence, and eventually all the counselors fell back asleep. Around 6 a.m. the next morning on June 13th, a counselor by the name of Carla woke up early to go and take a shower. As she walked near the trail, near the girls' tent, something unusual caught her eye. There were 3 sleeping bags lying outside side by side about 150 yards away from the girls' tents. The sleeping bags seemed to be very randomly placed, but when Carla approached the first sleeping bag and unzipped it, she was met with a gruesome sight: the lifeless body of a young girl. She wasn't wearing anything and she was tied up. Camp staff were immediately alerted, and upon further inspection, they found that the other 2 sleeping bags also contained victims. All 3 girls, 8-year-old Lori Farmer, 9-year-old Michelle Goose, and 10-year-old Doris Milner, had been brutally murdered. Their bodies found covered in injuries, painting the horrifying picture of what those 3 girls went through. All 3 of them also showed signs of SA. The counselors notified the camp owners, and in an uncomfortable detail, the owners called their lawyers first before calling the police. When the police was called, it didn't take long for them to arrive. Sheriff Pete Weaver and other local law enforcement officers arrived, followed by OSBI, Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agents. They were shown the 3 girls' bodies zipped in their sleeping bags left near a trail not far away from their tent, and immediately it was clear to them that the girls were unalived elsewhere, likely inside of their tent, and then moved to where they would be eventually found. Inside the tent, investigators found red-stained mattresses, a partial footprint, duct tape, rope, and a red flashlight lens. The lens also had what looked to be like a partial fingerprint. The back flap of their tent had been cut open, indicating that someone entered the tent from behind. The cause of death was later ruled as blunt force trauma. As officers secured the area, campers were quietly evacuated, and officers did what they could to try and keep the panic to a minimum. The reactions of the girls' parents upon learning what had happened to their daughters were, as you can imagine, utter devastation, confusion, and disbelief. Lori's father was inconsolable when he found out what happened. He just collapsed to the ground. Denise's mother, that poor lady, she was overwhelmed with guilt. And of course, it wasn't her fault. Of course, no one could have predicted a horrific event such as this one. But remember, Denise did not want to go to camp, and it was her mother that encouraged her to go. And she encouraged her to go, believing really that it would be a good experience, but the guilt haunted her. These families were all facing unimaginable grief, but they were also turned into the center of a media firestorm and a painfully long investigation. It was awful. Once the campers had been evacuated, law enforcement began canvassing the wooded area, searching for all and any clues. By that afternoon, they had a massive search underway involving tracking dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of officers combing the woods. But despite the early efforts and the amount of evidence collected, the case would become one of the most haunting unsolved crimes in American history. The police were under immense pressure, and in the days and weeks following the discoveries of the girls' bodies, a combination of criminal history, physical evidence, and circumstantial factors led investigators to the same name. On the 10th day of the investigation, they announced that their primary suspect was a man named Gene Leroy Hart. There were a handful of reasons as to why they suspected this guy specifically, and very, very valid reasons at that. The first being because of his criminal background. Gene Hart was a convicted offender and kidnapper. In 1966, he had abducted and essayed 2 pregnant women, blindfolding them with duct tape and leaving them in the woods. For that, he was handed a 309-year sentence. The similarity of those crimes to what happened at Camp Scott, particularly the tying up of the victims, the essay, and the rural setting, immediately raised red flags for investigators, which brings us to reason number 2, the fact that he had escaped prison. At the time of this case, Gene had been on the run for 4 years, having escaped prison in 1973. He was considered very dangerous and had managed to avoid being captured by literally hiding out in the deep woods of Cookson Hills, which was very, very close to Camp Scott. He was legit hiding right by Camp Scott, living in a cave in the woods. Third, he had grown up in the area and he was familiar with the specific woods surrounding the camp. Locals whispered that he was the kind of person who was more than capable of living off-grid, essentially hiding in the woods, which he was, and that made the crime all that more plausible for someone with his background. Also, I didn't know exactly where to fit this in, but when he kidnapped and essayed those 2 pregnant women, he was described to have been making really weird and deep grunts, and at Camp Scott the night of the crimes, people said said to have heard weird and deep grunts that almost sounded animalistic, if you had to say. Actually, not animalistic. They said that it was weird grunts that didn't sound like a human or an animal, but the thought that that noise could have been this grown man literally makes me want to throw up. And the fourth reason was the physical evidence at the scene. Investigators found several pieces of physical evidence linking Gene to the scene, the biggest one being the cave they found nearby, where Gene had been reportedly hiding. In the cave, investigators found items that tied him to the camp, like duct tape matching the tape found at the scene of the crime, photos, newspaper clippings, and a pair of sunglasses that were stolen from a camp counselor. There was also a strand of hair found at the scene of the crime that was very likely Gene's, and a male DNA recovered at the scene of the crime that came back as likely belonging to a non-white male with type O blood, which matches Gene's description. Needless to say, they had plenty of evidence to find and arrest Gene Hart for the crimes that took the lives of those 3 victims. But in order to do so, they needed to find him, and the investigation in looking for Gene set off one of the largest manhunts in state history at the time. It was a 10-month manhunt that included hundreds of law enforcement officers and hundreds of volunteers combing through the rugged woods of Cookson Hills. But after those 10 long months, they found him. He was being sheltered and pretty much hidden by family and local Cherokee medicine men. But on April 6th of 1978, authorities were able to locate him and he was placed under arrest. As if they needed more evidence to tie him to the crimes, on him when they found him, he had stolen items from Camp Scott, including a broken mirror and a pipe. He also looked at officers and said, quote, "You will never pin this on me," end quote. Gene's trial began March 19th of 1979, and his defense team tried to break down the prosecution's case piece by piece, and I hate to say it, but they were unfortunately doing a good job at presenting reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 5 minutes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and when they returned, their verdict was not guilty. They stated the prosecution did not prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. Shocking and devastating. Gene Hart was sent back to prison because, remember, he still had 305 years to serve from his 308-year sentence, but only 2 years after his trial and after he was found not guilty, he collapsed and passed away from a heart attack at the age of 35. And that is where we're forced to leave it, with more questions than answers. 3 little girls, Lori, Michelle, and Denise, went off to summer camp and never returned home. And almost 5 decades later, their families still don't know exactly what happened that night in the dark woods of Camp Scott, and they never got the closure they so deserved. Yes, there was a trial. Yes, there was a suspect, but there was no conviction, no confession, no clear truth, just grief and the memory of those precious little girls kept alive by all those who loved and cared for them. Camp Scott shut down after that summer, and it has never reopened.
If a married man ever tries to convince you that it's okay to get with him because he is separated and about to get a divorce, do not believe him. Story time. When I was working at Chipotle, there was this one manager there that was married. You know what? I'll admit it. I was always attracted to him. He reminded me of my ex, but like the better looking version. But I obviously like never did anything about it because I knew he was married. Duh. Now, at this point in time, Pizza Hut was constantly complaining about how she wants to get a divorce and how she's gonna divorce him and how, like, you know, shit like that. How he's sleeping on the couch and like sometimes like she'll go spend the night with her family and stuff like that. Let's fast forward. Okay, so eventually he kind of just stops bringing up his wife, period. I don't see the ring anymore, and she never fucking comes in anymore. So I don't really think anything of it per se. I just kind of go about my business until one night I had plans to go see my ex, and Pizza Hut knew about this, and I guess like that made him feel some type of way because this is the night he decided to tell me that he has feelings for me. Now, not only did this man confess his feelings for me, he also broke the news to me that he has been separated from his wife for a few months now and that they're about to get a divorce and that he's just waiting for the papers or something like that. Mind you, I don't know how fucking divorce works, okay? Now, there definitely were moments that were kind of like, this isn't adding up, but there was always a perfect excuse. So we were sneaking around. We would like hook up after work, like in the parking lot or, you know, shit like that. But his excuse for that was that his wife that he's separated from, right, is living with her family right now while they're getting things figured out, and that he has the kid. And he said while he's at work, his mom also lives with them and she watches the kids, so we're not gonna go there and mess around with his kid and his mom there. And I also had roommates at the time, so I couldn't bring him over, so that's why we were doing that. That made sense to me, and we were always on the phone, so it just kind of made sense to me, like, oh yeah, maybe they really are like separated, you know what I mean? It seems like she's never fucking there. I did also attempt to do some snooping just to make sure, and I found her Instagram and I found her Facebook, none of which did she have any like pictures of them together. It was literally just pictures of her and her child. not of him at all. So to me, I'm thinking, okay, it does seem like they're not together, so I think I'm in the clear. I also found his profiles, but his were private. To make a long motherfucking story short, he had quit not too long after we started like seeing each other, and you know, like a week or so after he had quit, all of a sudden I just stopped hearing from him. In my mind, I'm like, okay, red flag, red flag. So I go and I do some snooping again. His account is still private. Hers is still unprivate. Why are all the pictures of him back up? Now, to this day, I still am not 100% sure if they were ever actually separated or not. I don't know. I just kind of left it alone, and now we're here. And I have not heard from him since. So, yeah. So if you're ever in a similar situation and you have a man tell you that recently he has been separated and that he's getting a divorce, do not believe him until you see for sure that he got a fucking divorce. Don't let these men play you.